Maya Carter left the office after sunset, the sky a soft mix of blue and gold. She did not rush. She never rushed. Calm steps, careful eyes, and a steady breath were part of her daily routine. She wore a plain blouse and a simple jacket. Her hair was tied back. She drove an old gray sedan that blended into city traffic. Most people who saw her car did not remember it a minute later. That was the point. She wanted to be quietly present and not draw attention. It helped her work. It also kept her safe. Maya was a leader at the local DEA field office. People called her boss in the halls, but she did not act like a boss. She listened more than she spoke. She asked short, clear questions and waited for full answers. For months, she had been running a quiet investigation with only a small team. The case was sensitive. It involved a few city officers who pulled over drivers, often black drivers, and then claimed to find small bags in places where a bag would be easy to miss. Near a tire, under a seat, or in a trunk that had not been opened before the stop. The reports were neat. The timing was always clean on paper. But the pattern felt wrong. Complaints from drivers lined up with each other. Cameras went down at the worst times. Dispatch times did not match the written reports. Something was off. Her plan was simple and patient. She did not want a loud move. She wanted the truth to stand strong, step by step, so that it could not be pushed over later. That meant late nights, long drives, and a lot of notes. Tonight, she followed her usual route home, taking wide streets with slow traffic and many lights. She obeyed every rule. She used her turn signal early. She kept a safe speed. Her rear plate was clean and clear. Her headlights were on. She breathed in, breathed out, and watched her mirrors. A pair of headlights appeared behind her at a light. They stayed close when the light turned green. They kept the same distance for almost 2 blocks. The car was a city patrol car. Maya knew the look of it like she knew her own car. She did not tense her shoulders or change her path. She kept her hands at the wheel and looked ahead. The patrol car's lights flashed. Maya signaled and pulled to the side in a safe spot under a streetlight. The area was quiet. Small shops with metal shutters, a bus stop, and a corner store that was still open. The streetlight gave a soft, even glow. She turned off her engine and placed both hands on the wheel. She kept her face calm. She looked forward and waited. 2 officers got out. The first officer was taller and walked to her window. The second officer hung back and looked at the rear of her car. The first officer's tone was sharp and quick from the first word. He asked why. She had rolled a stop sign 2 blocks earlier. Maya knew she had not. She had counted the seconds at that sign as she always did. Still, she did not argue. She used simple language and a steady voice. I stopped at the sign. If there is a concern, I am happy to cooperate. The officer's voice stayed hard. He asked for her license and registration. She moved slowly and told him each step. My license is in my wallet in my bag. My registration is in the glove box. He nodded and watched her hands as she showed him the documents. He looked at them for a long time, longer than normal. The second officer walked near the back tire on the driver's side. He bent down for a second. Maya did not turn her head, but she saw the movement in her side mirror. She heard a soft scratch near the rubber. Her heart beat a little faster, but her face did not change. The second officer called out, "What is this?" His voice lifted with false surprise. The first officer looked over his shoulder and then stepped away from the window. Maya kept her hands on the wheel and stared straight ahead at the streetlight. She counted her breaths again. In, out, slow and even. She closed her eyes for 1.5 seconds and opened them again. The officers came back together to her window. The first officer's voice had changed. He now sounded like someone reading lines he had practiced. "Ma'am, we found a small bag near your back tire. Can you step out of the car?" Maya replied in a soft voice. "I will step out. I want to keep my hands visible." She unbuckled the seatbelt, opened the door, and stepped out, making sure the cabin light turned on. She did not reach for anything else. She stood with her hands at her sides, palms open. The second officer held up a small clear bag. It was sealed and looked clean. It did not have street dust on it. It did not have a mark from the tire. It was the kind of detail that spoke loudly to a trained eye. Maya did not say that. She only watched and listened. The first officer started to explain how they had seen the bag in plain view. The words were neat. The timing was perfect. It was too perfect. The second officer asked if she had anything else in the car. She said, "No." A tow truck pulled up from the far end of the block. The timing made sense to the officers. They had likely called it early. To Maya, the timing felt like part of a routine. She let her eyes take in small details without moving her head too much. She read the tow truck's company name. She saw the last 3 digits of its plate. She glanced at the patrol car's number painted near the trunk. She made a quiet note, in her memory. She looked at the officers' name tags just once. She repeated the names in her head. She felt a small weight of sadness for the city and for the work she had chosen, but she also felt steady hope. Truth could be slow, but truth was strong. The first officer told her that they would search the car. Maya did not give consent. She spoke clearly and politely. "I do not consent to a search." The officer nodded and said they had probable cause because of the bag. He looked pleased with himself. The second officer moved again to the back tire. His shoulder blocked the side mirror for a moment. When he moved, his hand was empty, and then it was not. Maya did not react. She kept her breathing slow and even. People came out of the corner store. They stood near the door and watched. One of them took out a phone, maybe to call a friend, maybe to record. A bus rumbled past the stop without picking up anyone. The streetlight kept its steady glow. Somewhere a dog barked twice and then stopped. All of this felt very normal on the surface, and yet everything was not normal at all. Maya asked for a supervisor in a calm voice. The first officer said one was on the way. His tone suggested it might take a while. She nodded. She asked for their badge numbers. He hesitated, then spoke the numbers. She repeated them back and thanked him. He looked annoyed that she was polite. He wanted a different kind of response. He did not get it. The tow truck driver stepped down and looked around, unsure how close to get. He rubbed his hands together and glanced at each face, trying to read the moment. The first officer waved him forward. "We're going to impound the vehicle," he said. Maya turned to the driver and said softly, "Please keep the car in view at all times." It was a simple request, not a command. The driver nodded quickly, as if he wanted to show he understood. It was not much, but it mattered. Small choices in a moment like this could help keep the record straight later. Maya's phone stayed in her bag. She did not reach for it. She knew someone on her small team was watching her path tonight. They never said it out loud. They did not need to. They had a check-in plan that was quiet and safe. She could trust that plan. Still, she hoped the right person was awake and at a desk right now. She hoped the systems they had set up would hold. She focused on her breathing again. The first officer told her to turn around and place her hands behind her back. He kept his voice flat, as if he was reading it off a card. She followed the instruction and kept her eyes on the streetlight. She did not tell him who she was. She did not flash a badge. She did not raise her voice. Tonight was not for loud moves. Tonight was for careful steps and clean records. The cuffs clicked, not too tight, not too loose. She could feel the edge of the metal, but there was no rough pull. She stood straight and still. The corner store crowd whispered to each other. The tow truck driver looked down at his boots. The second officer held the small bag again, this time near the patrol car's hood, as if he wanted to make sure someone saw it. He took out a phone, perhaps to take a picture. Maya let her eyes rest on the bag for only a second. It looked too clean for a city street. It looked like something placed, not found. A siren sounded from far away and then faded. The first officer spoke into his radio. He used short, clipped words. He did not mention the corner store. He did not mention the tow truck. He kept the story small. The second officer said the trunk needed to be checked. The first officer nodded, then looked at Maya as if waiting for her to object. She said nothing. She did not want to feed a scene. She wanted the record to show who spoke and what they said without extra noise. She thought of the people who had come to her office these past months. Some had been worried, some had been angry, all had been tired. They used different words, but their stories touched the same points. A stop without a clear reason, a small bag that seemed to appear from nowhere, a report that looked tidy, and then a slow, hard path to clear their name. She had promised them she would do this the right way. She had promised them patience and care. She felt those promises right now like a thin line of steel inside her spine. The supervisor was still not on the scene. The tow truck hooked the sedan and lifted the front wheels. The driver looked at Maya, then at the first officer, then back at Maya. He looked like he wanted to say something and decided not to. He climbed back. The station smelled like old coffee and floor cleaner. The lights were bright and a little too white. Maya sat on a wooden bench near a desk where a clerk typed without looking up. She kept her shoulders straight. Her hands were cuffed in front. Now, not behind. An officer had moved the cuffs after she asked in a calm voice if they could be adjusted for comfort. He had stared at her for a second, then changed them without a word. Small kindness. Small proof that calm words still worked, even in a tense place. The first officer stood across the room writing his report. He wrote slowly, as if careful words could make a weak story strong. The second officer leaned against a filing cabinet and scrolled on his phone. Maya watched the clock above the desk and fixed each minute in her memory. She counted details. The room number on the door frame, the officer's handwriting style, the way the bag from the street was now in a clear evidence envelope with a fresh seal. She read the seal number from where she sat. She repeated it in her head until it stayed. A booking officer called her name. She stood. She spoke softly. "Before we continue, I would like the incident number, the arresting officer names, and the evidence seal number read into the record." Her voice held no anger, only light and steady care. The booking officer frowned. Then he read the numbers and names. The clerk typed them. Keys clicked. The sound was clean, like raindrops on a window. They took her fingerprints. They took a simple photo. She asked to keep her jacket because the room was cold. They agreed. She asked to keep her shoes. They said yes. She did not argue over small things. She saved her words for what mattered. When they asked if she had anything else to declare, she said, "I do not consent to any search beyond what is required." The booking officer nodded. He had heard this sentence before. He kept his tone even. Understood. They moved her to a small interview room with a camera in the corner. A red light on the camera showed it was on. She sat in a chair at a gray table. The chair wobbled a little. The table had a scratch across the surface, like someone had once slid a heavy binder over it. The first officer came in with a form and sat opposite her. He folded his hands. He tried a friendly smile. "We can make this easy," he said. "Tell me where the bag came from." Maya met his eyes. "I will wait for a supervisor," she said, "and I would like to make a phone call." He paused. "You'll have time for that," he said, but he did not move to allow it. He started to ask questions about her evening. She listened, then repeated, "I will wait for a supervisor and my phone call." Her voice never changed. It held the same weight as a steady drumbeat. After a moment, he pushed his chair back and left the room. 10 minutes passed. The red camera light stayed on. The door opened. A sergeant stepped in. He had a careful face and a slow way of speaking. "I'm Sergeant Miller," he said. "You asked for a supervisor." Maya nodded once. "Yes, I also want to make my call." He looked at the form on the table, then at the camera. He gave a small nod. "You can make your call." A phone on the wall had a long cord. He unlocked it with a key and stepped back. Maya dialed a number she knew by heart. The phone rang twice. "Duty line," a calm voice said. "This is DEA duty." She kept her words simple and neutral. "This is Maya Carter. I am safe. I am being held at Central Station. Please log the time of this call. Please alert AUSA Daniel Reed. Please alert Deputy Director Ross that the contingency plan should begin." There was a pause. The duty officer's voice stayed calm. Logged, understood. Are you injured? No, she said. I will not discuss the facts on this line. Please proceed with notices and preservation requests now. Understood, he said. We're moving. She hung up. The room felt a little warmer, though the air had not changed. She knew the plan would move like a clean machine. Quiet emails with subject lines that meant more than they said. Official letters sent to the department to preserve all recordings from body cameras, dash cameras, dispatch audio, and station cameras. A notice to the towing yard to hold the car exactly as it was. A request to city traffic to save footage from the corner light. A note to the field team to check the small store on the corner for its own camera. She made a second call. The line to the federal prosecutor's office picked up. United States Attorney's Office, a receptionist said. This is Maya Carter, she said. Please connect me to AUSA Daniel Reed. It is urgent. The hold tone buzzed for a few seconds. Then Daniel's voice came on, alert and steady. Maya, I am safe, she said. I am at Central Station. Please come. Bring credentials. Keep your words limited on arrival. I do not want the wider case exposed at the desk. I'm on my way, he said. 15 minutes. She did not ask for a time estimate, and he did not explain his route. They did not need to. They trusted each other's pace. Sergeant Miller had watched her face without trying to hear the words. When she hung up, he said, You will have to. Wait here while we finish the paperwork. I understand, Maya said. Please note my requests for evidence seals, dispatch logs, and chain of custody entries. He nodded once. It was not a promise, but it was not a refusal. In another part of the city, 2 members of her team were already moving. Rosa Nguyen, a careful analyst with a quiet voice, picked up her go-bag and slid into a gray SUV. She called the corner store, nearest the stop. Sir, she said when the owner answered, I work with a federal office. There was a stop outside your store this evening. Do you have a camera facing the street? The man said yes. Please do not overwrite that footage, Rosa said gently. We will come with a letter to preserve it. We want to do everything the right way. The owner agreed. He sounded relieved that someone had called quickly. At the same time, Caleb Ortiz opened a secure terminal. He accessed public 911 logs and matched them with the time of the stop. He wrote down the dispatch call number, the unit numbers, and the timestamps. He flagged a gap that looked odd. He sent a preservation request to the city's emergency communications office. He then pulled up prior complaints from the public against the same 2 officers. He found 3 in the last 6 months. In each case, the camera had been down for maintenance. He added that pattern to a short memo and sent it to Daniel Reed with the subject line, for review upon arrival. Back at the station, the first officer returned to the interview room with a field test kit. He held it up as if it could end the story. We'll do a quick test, he said, almost cheerful. Maya kept her tone even. Please note the kit lot number and the time of the test, she said. Please record who opens the evidence seal and who reseals it. He hesitated. We'll handle it, he said. She did not push. She looked at the camera in the corner and then back at the table. The sergeant called the first officer into the hallway. Their voices were low. Maya couldn't hear the words, but she watched the body language. A small shrug from the officer, a slow head shake from the sergeant, a glance toward the camera. When the officer came back, his smile was gone. He opened the evidence envelope with a click of scissors. Seal number 5321, he said almost to himself. Open at 1953. He wrote it down. He applied the field test. The result was unclear for a moment, then shifted color. The officer sat a little taller. Positive, he said. He made sure to look at the camera as he said it. Maya did not change her expression. Please note that field tests can give wrong results, she said. I request a full lab test. The sergeant nodded. It will go to the lab. The door opened. Daniel Reed stepped in with a briefcase and a short, neat coat. He kept his face neutral. He placed his ID on the table. Assistant United States Attorney Daniel Reed, he said for the camera. He turned to Maya. Miss Carter, are you okay? Yes, she said. Thank you for coming. He looked at the sergeant. "I will be present for any further questions," he said. "Also, I am requesting immediate preservation of all recordings related to this stop and this booking. I will send a written notice within the hour." The first officer's jaw tightened. He had not expected this. He glanced at the second officer, who finally put his phone away. The sergeant cleared his throat. "We will preserve what we have," he said. Daniel's eyes did not move. "Preserve everything," he said, slow and clear. "Body cameras, dash cameras, dispatch audio, GPS logs, the tow log, the impound lot log, the hallway cameras, this room's camera, and the evidence chain of custody from the street to the lab." Maya watched the small changes around her. The clerk outside stopped typing for a second and then started again. A radio down the hall crackled with a distant message. A paper cup fell into a trash can and made a hollow sound. The red light on the camera kept its steady glow. Daniel sat and opened his briefcase. He took out a legal pad. He wrote the date, the time, the room number, and the names present. His pen moved fast and neat. "Ms. Carter," he said, "you may choose to answer no questions. I advise that you do not answer until we review the full context with the proper supervisor." She nodded. "Agreed." The door opened again. A captain entered. His face was careful like the sergeant's, but his eyes moved quickly, adding up the room in seconds. The federal ID on the table, the open test kit, the evidence envelope, the camera in the corner. "I'm Captain Ellis," he said. "What's the issue?" Daniel did not look away. "Captain, your officers have arrested a federal employee. We will be making formal requests. We ask that you secure ale." The room held a quiet that felt heavy. The senior internal affairs investigator waited with his pen above the page. Maya sat straight, hands folded, breathing slow. She chose each word with care. "My name is Maya Carter," she said. "I am the special agent in charge at the DEA field office for this district." She did not raise her voice. She did not rush. The words moved through the air like slow, steady steps. For 1 second, no one spoke. The captain's eyes widened, then returned to neutral. The first officer blinked once, then stared at the table. The second officer's shoulders dropped. Daniel Reed wrote the sentence on his notepad and underlined it once. The camera's red light glowed the same as before. Nothing else in the room moved, but the shape of the night changed. "Thank you," the senior investigator said. His tone stayed calm. "For the record, we will secure all related materials at this time." He turned to the captain. "Captain Ellis, please arrange immediate collection of body camera files, dash camera files, radio traffic, GPS logs, the tow log, and this building's hallway and room videos. Please also secure the evidence bag in a locked locker with 2-person access and record the key holders." Captain Ellis gave a short nod. "Understood." He stepped to the doorway and spoke low into the hall. His voice was steady but faster. "Now." Daniel looked at Maya. "Ms. Carter, do you wish to answer any questions at this time?" "Not yet," she said. "I will wait until Internal Affairs has secured the materials." Daniel faced the camera. "We are pausing this interview, pending preservation and review." Outside the room, the clerk's typing sped up. A phone rang twice and went quiet. Footsteps passed down the corridor, then returned in the opposite direction. The building had its own heartbeat. Tonight, that heartbeat felt louder. The senior investigator asked for a brief summary to place on the record. "I was stopped," Maya said, "and a small bag was shown to me near my back tire. The bag did not belong to me." She kept the summary short. She did not add ideas. She left space for the evidence to speak. Meanwhile, across town, Rosa sat with Mr. Ahmed and the young clerk in the small office of the corner store. She held a printed letter with a city seal that asked them to preserve the video until an officer returned with a formal request. They had already paused the footage at the key second. The view showed Maya's gray sedan, the patrol car behind it, the 2 officers walking forward, and then a small bend near the rear tire. The timing stamp in the corner showed the minute and the second. Rosa wrote those numbers on a small card. and asked Mr. Ahmed to sign below them to confirm the time his system displayed. He signed with careful strokes. "We will keep this safe," he said. Rosa nodded. "Thank you," she said. "We will do this the right way." At the communications center, Caleb watched a progress bar fill as body camera uploads synced to the central server. He held a preservation order that had come in by fax and email, both stamped. The dispatcher on duty confirmed that a packet of files had already been pushed by automatic rules for the unit. "We had a short drop in the dash cam at 19:49, the dispatcher said. "It restarted at 19:51. Caleb wrote this down. He drew a small box around the gap and wrote in small letters, "Compare with store cam." He kept his face calm. He did not assume. He only recorded. Back in the station interview room, the senior investigator asked the two officers to step outside for a moment. They did. The door closed. The air in the room felt clearer, like a window had opened. The investigator turned to Maya. "Ma'am, do you require medical attention?" "No," she said. "Thank you." "Do you want water?" "Yes, please." He brought a cup. She took a slow sip. The captain returned with a metal box, a seal strip, and a log sheet. The sergeant placed the evidence envelope in the box. The captain read the old seal number from the envelope, then wrote the new seal number as he closed the box. "Box sealed, at 2020, he said, and the senior investigator wrote it down. The captain wrote his name and the sergeant's name on the log as key holders. "Two-person access only," the captain said. The senior investigator nodded. "Thank you." Daniel spoke next. "Captain, I will also need copies of the arrest report draft, the initial tow request, and the field test kit lot number." The captain looked at the first officer's notes, then at Daniel. "We will provide those," he said. His tone was careful. The first officer and the second officer re-entered the room. Both kept their eyes low. The senior investigator sat across from them with a blank page and a steady pen. "We will record a short factual timeline," he said. "Start with the reason for the stop." The first officer said, "Rolling stop at Maple and 3rd. The investigator wrote it down. "Body cameras. On," the officer said. The investigator looked at the captain. "Please confirm." The captain spoke into his radio for a second. "Body cameras show a brief gap on one unit," he said after a pause. "Automatic restart." The investigator wrote this down. "Dash camera. There was a momentary drop," the captain added. The investigator wrote again. "Tow request time? 1946, the sergeant said. "Stop time?" the investigator asked. The first officer looked at his notes. 1947. Daniel wrote those 2 times on his pad and drew a small arrow between them. He did not speak. "Field test conducted when?" the investigator asked. 1953, the first officer said. "Lot number?" The sergeant read it from the kit. The investigator wrote it down. He moved steady and slow, placing each detail on the page like a stone in a careful path. Maya sat quietly and listened. She felt the flow of the room. She felt the shift that comes when a story begins to meet facts that can be checked. The door opened again. A plainclothes detective from the tow yard unit stepped in with a clipboard. "We have the car in a secure bay," he said. "We placed a tamper tape on each door in the trunk. We logged the mileage. We have the towing. Company driver waiting with us, and we recorded his arrival time and signatures." Daniel nodded. "Thank you. Please hold all access until a warrant is reviewed." The detective agreed. "It's locked with a camera on the bay," he added. The senior investigator wrote "impound secure" on his page and underlined it. Out in the city, Rosa left the corner store and drove 2 streets over to a bank with an outside camera that faced the same block from another angle. It was late, but the security office had a night staff. She pressed the call button, held up her ID against the glass, and spoke in her calm voice. "Please preserve this evening's footage from 1930 to 2100, she said. "We will bring a letter in the morning," she added. The guard inside took down the time window and nodded. The system had a rolling memory. Without a prompt, it would erase in a few days. Now it would not. Caleb sent a short message to Daniel. Dispatch confirms Unit 214 near 3 similar stops in last 90 days. Camera gaps noted. He attached the control numbers for those stops. He then searched open court records for any cases built around those stops. He found 2 pending and 1 closed with a plea. He marked the names. He did not judge. He only prepared the ground for careful review. At the station, the senior investigator turned to the 2 officers again. "We will need your phones," he said. "We will provide a receipt." The first officer swallowed. "Why?" The investigator's voice stayed even. "Standard practice when we look into timing, calls, and messages related to a stop and report. The scope will be limited to work communications for the relevant period, under E. Warrant." Daniel added, "A judge is being contacted now." The captain looked at the floor for a second, then at the investigator. "We will cooperate," he said. His voice had the weight of a decision that had taken shape inside him and would not go back. The first officer looked at the second officer. The second officer nodded, slow, like someone who had reached a quiet shore after a long swim. They handed over their phones. The investigator placed the phones in separate envelopes, wrote each name, and sealed them with numbered strips. He wrote the numbers on his log and read them aloud for the camera. Daniel checked his watch and then the door. A young officer stepped in with a printed paper. "From the judge," he said, and passed it to Daniel. The order authorized preservation and immediate collection of specific categories of records: camera files, radio logs, GPS data, tow and impound records, and copies of reports and notes related to the stop and booking. It also authorized a narrow review of communications between the 2 officers and specific unit numbers around the time of the stop. Daniel placed the paper on the table and read the key lines into the camera so the record would show the authority. Maya watched the faces around her. The first officer's eyes had lost their early confidence. He looked tired. The second officer kept pressing his lips together, as if to hold back a rushing thought. The captain stayed near the door, answering short questions from the hall and returning with short answers. The sergeant moved like someone carrying glass, slow, careful, alert. The senior investigator asked one more question for the record. "Was there any pre-stop contact with the tow company?" The sergeant looked at the tow log. "Call placed at 1946, he repeated. "That is 1 minute before the stop time you gave," the investigator said. His tone did not accuse. He simply set one number beside another number. The room felt smaller again. Time had turned into a ruler on the table, in the impound. Morning started with a soft light and a clear plan. In the conference room, the team gathered with quiet faces and steady hands. The senior internal affairs investigator laid out the path in simple words. "We have enough to move forward," he said. "We will not rush. We will not guess. We will show what happened with clean facts." Maya nodded. Daniel agreed. Rosa and Caleb shared short updates. The captain stood near the door and listened, then said, "We will do this the right way." By mid-morning, the city's legal advisor and the police chief joined them. The chief looked tired but focused. He asked for the summary once, then a second time. He asked for times, places, and names. He did not ask for opinions. Daniel read the timeline in a calm voice. He named the tow request time, the stop time, the camera gaps, the body camera status, and the exact second when the second officer's hand moved near the rear tire. He read the new evidence seal numbers and the list of items found in the patrol car trunk. The room stayed quiet except for his voice and the small clicks of pens. The chief took in a slow breath and let it out. "We will place the 2 officers on unpaid leave today," he said. "We will inform them in writing. Internal affairs will continue the review. Our training unit will audit the field test process. The tow request rules will be changed, right? Now, no tow will be called before a stop unless there is a clear and documented safety need." He looked at Maya. "Thank you for your careful work." She answered with a small nod. "Thank you for acting quickly." Before noon, The two officers each received a short letter. The letter did not accuse. It said only that, based on new information, they were relieved of duty while a formal inquiry and outside review took place. They signed to show they had received the letter. They were allowed to speak with a representative and a lawyer. The tone was firm and respectful. The process stayed clean. At the courthouse, Daniel filed the first set of papers. These papers did not declare guilt. They opened a path for charges based on the collected evidence: false reporting, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations. A judge reviewed the filings and set a timeline for hearings. The judge also signed orders to secure related records from the last 6 months that matched the same pattern: stops on the same 2 roads, camera gaps, early tow calls, and small, clean bags found near tires or under seats. Meanwhile, Rosa and Caleb set up a room down the hall with a whiteboard and a printer that hummed without pause. They started a review of prior stops tied to the same unit numbers. They made neat stacks: dispatch logs, camera files, reports, tow logs, and any letters from people who had complained. For each stack, they wrote a tiny, clear card with the date, time, unit, and the simplest notes. They did not decorate the board. They did not color code. They let the straight lines and clean words do the work. The city called people who had filed past complaints and invited them to a listening session that afternoon. The message was simple: "We are reviewing some stops and want to make sure your story is heard and recorded. You're welcome here." Chairs were set in a circle. Cold water and tea sat on a side table. A sign on the door said, "Please turn off your phone sound." There was no stage, no spotlight, just a circle in a quiet room. When people arrived, the staff welcomed them with soft voices and gave them a 1-page sheet about the process: who would listen, how their words would be recorded, and what would happen next. A city translator sat near the door for anyone who needed help. The first person spoke with slow care, then the second, then the third. The stories did not shout. They walked on gentle feet, but each carried a strong weight. A pattern grew, not from a single story, but from many simple lines that matched each other without forcing anything. Across the street, at a small community center, a free legal clinic opened for the week to help people clear their records if their past stops were part of the pattern. Volunteer lawyers sat at folding tables with laptops. They explained each step in plain language. They gave people short lists of what to bring. They smiled often and did not rush anyone. At 3 p.m, the police chief held a short press meeting with the city attorney. The room was small. There were no dramatic lights, just a clean podium and a simple backdrop. The chief began with a steady line: "We are aware of serious concerns related to several traffic stops. We have secured evidence. We are working with internal affairs and federal partners. 2 officers are on leave. We are reviewing past cases. We will share what we can when we can. We will protect the process and the people. Our focus is fairness." He did not point fingers. He did not make promises that did not belong to him. He said only what was true and what would happen next. That evening, the city sent letters to people whose cases might be affected, explaining that some arrests would be reviewed and, if needed, dismissed. The letters were written in simple language. They did not use big words or legal flourishes. They explained what would happen and who to call for help. They included dates for information sessions and the address of the free legal clinic. In the impound bay, the old gray sedan sat under bright light. The tamper strips were still tight. A city tech and a federal tech opened the car together with 2 cameras running. They read the seal numbers out loud. They checked the trunk, the seats, the floor, and the wheel wells. They wiped a small cloth along the back tire. The chalk line at 12 o'clock was still intact. The video recorded each bit of dust and each quiet step. When they finished, they closed the car again and resealed it for court. The techs signed the log side by side. The tow truck driver stopped by with his lunch break and asked if the car still needed watching. The detective smiled and said, "We're good now." The driver nodded, then looked at the car for a long second. "I just wanted to see it end right," he said. He left with a lighter step. Back at the corner store, Mr. Ahmed met Rosa and handed over a copy of the footage with a careful grip, like passing a glass bowl. He had labeled the drive with the date and time and had signed a small note. "We kept it safe," he said. Rosa thanked him and the young clerk and left a short receipt. She also left a simple thank you card from the city. "Your care helped. Protect the truth." In the days that followed, the first officer chose to meet with his lawyer and entered a plea to some of the charges. The second officer asked for time and then gave a statement with a representative present. He told his part in a quiet voice. He did not try to make it grand. He answered questions. He said when things began to slip and how small choices had lined up into a wrong path. The room did not cheer. The room did not judge out loud. The room wrote down the words. The department began a set of reforms without waiting for the final court steps. They changed the tow policy so that any pre-stop tow call would trigger an automatic review and a supervisor check. They made a rule that body cameras must be checked at the start and end of each shift, with random audits in the middle. The audit log would be kept by an office that did not report to the same unit. They updated field test kits with clear training on their limits, and a rule that no report could rely only on the kit. Lab tests would be standard before charges were filed, unless a judge had a very strong reason to act faster. They also built an early warning system for repeated complaints. If a unit showed 3 or more similar issues within 6 months, a silent flag would go to a supervisor and to a small review board. The board would look at the pattern, not to punish first, but to catch a problem early and fix it before harm grew. The goal was simple and strong: protect the public and protect good officers from bad habits and bad pressure. Maya stood at the back of a town hall one evening as the chief and community leaders spoke. People asked clear questions. The answers were simple and honest. "What happens to old cases?" someone asked. "We review them and dismiss those built on wrong acts," the city attorney said. "How will you make sure this does not happen again?" someone else asked. The chief pointed to the new policies and to the outside review panel that now included a retired judge, a community advocate, and a data expert who would read the numbers without fear. When it was her turn, Maya walked to the front. She spoke, in plain words. "My job is to protect the honest process," she said. "We do that with careful steps, clean records, and steady work. We do it by listening to people who come forward. We do it by training and by early checks. We do it by standing next to the truth, not on top of it." She thanked the people who had shared their stories. She thanked the city staff who had listened. She thanked the officers and investigators who had done hard, quiet work without asking for attention. After the meeting, a young man stopped her near the door. He had been one of the people wrongly stopped last year. He said, "I just wanted to say, it feels different now." She smiled and said, "That is the goal. It should feel fair." He nodded, took a breath, and walked out into the evening with his shoulders a little higher. Weeks later, the court reviewed the cases tied to the pattern. Some were dismissed outright. Records were corrected. People received letters that said, in simple language, that their names were cleared. The free legal clinic helped them fix what could be fixed. For some, it meant better job chances. For others, it meant a quiet mind at night. Small pieces of life shifted back into PL community. Speakers to talk with new officers. They talked about res.